Welcome to the Splitting Hairs podcast. I'm joined by Stack tonight and Scott, otherwise known as Run Rabbits One or the Rabbit
There you
Hole on X. How you doing, fellas?
All good.
Not too bad.
Nice. Well, we'll dive into all the fun conversation that we've got planned for this evening after we do our typical housekeeping. Want to shout out our sponsors who've been with us all throughout the regular season: Cottonwood Coffee and Bistro of Brookings, South Dakota, and True North Retirement Team. For those of you who are trying to figure out what to get your loved ones for the holiday season, what better than to hook them up with some stocking stuffers like Cottonwood Coffee's in-house roasted beans. They've got Glacial Till, they've got the Badlands roast, they got all different kinds. Go check them out at cottonwoodcoffee.com. Any orders over $20 and they're going to cover shipping. Great chance to put some stocking stuffers together and put some caffeine under the tree for your family. Also want to thank True North Retirement Team for supporting us throughout this season. Regardless of your age, young or old, they help you set up your finances for your future. They can help you figure out which insurance policies, life insurance policies, are best for you and long-term. And they can help advise you as you're moving forward throughout life to try to secure your assets, whether there be a death in the family or what have you. Life's unforeseen circumstances come for us all. So make sure you reach out to one of their advisors for a free consultation. That's 480-323-5801 to reach them. Guys, wild season, right? We ran the table, finished 11-0. So an unblemished record. And progressively, I would say overall, trended up throughout the year and didn't peak early. What are kind of your thoughts in summation for this season?
Well, I think there's a lot of guys playing their best football right now. Like I told Brian this, I think it was Saturday night. I just want to shout him out. Like he probably played his best game he's played in his career this weekend. And, you know, it doesn't show up on the stat sheet a lot, like with a bunch of sacks and stuff. But, I mean, he was putting on a clinic this weekend. And, I mean, I think a lot of guys are kind of trending up towards the playoffs. And that's kind of what we need. And, like, obviously, you know, the one big gripe I think we all have is just penalties at this point. Like, if we don't have, like, penalties that kill drives, like, these guys could put up 70 points every week, honestly. You know, so that's kind of, you know, how I feel at this point.
Scott, what's your take?
Yeah, it honestly kind of reminded me of last year because in the beginning of last year, like our non-conference and stuff, it really didn't feel like we were playing that well. We were kind of getting past folks like, UC Davis and stuff like that. We thought we were going to kill them, and that sort of happened a little bit. Felt like nothing was really flowing that well. But then once, you know, especially the D-line started gelling after we graduated, couple guys, now it just feels like we're just freaking steamrolling folks. Outside of, you know, Saturday could have been a little bit better, but you kind of get where, you know, they still accomplished what goals they were trying to. So everything just feels, I don't know, pretty dang good right now.
Yeah, that's a good assessment. I think overall, when you look at what we were trying to do on Saturday, I tweeted it out. I think there's a little bit of love that was trying to be sent the Yankees' way, and why not? Because clearly Jaden was uncoverable on Saturday, so they must have seen something on film. Jackson got a lot of opportunities too. Ironically, his catch ratio to how many targets he had was down, which is uncharacteristic of his production on field. But Jaden's was way up, surprisingly way up from even the Youngstown State game. Which he went off for 160. In this one, he had 10 catches for $187 and a touchdown, which is like just absurd when you really think about it. And every single pass thrown his way in terms of targets, according to the on-air broadcast team, he caught. So to be batting 1,000 on all your targets with that type of production in yardage and in tugs, that's pretty impressive. And a great way to go out on senior day. I think the last touchdown caught, or his only touchdown caught, but the last one caught was one when he was streaking, and it was him and Jackson were side by side on the end zone shot, and it could have gone to either one of them. In this case, it went to Jaden. So I just thought that was a fitting symbol of their time in blue and yellow, where they're just running free down the seam, and pick your poison, which twin you want to go to. You guys got any thoughts on that?
So yeah, I think they were definitely spreading it out. A lot of guys getting a lot of love on Saturday. I mean, and that's kind of been like a summation of the whole season, right? Like it's never really been just one guy carrying the load, depending, I mean, whether it's, one game to the next or just, a singular game itself. Like we kind of share the love more than I think we kind of ever have. You know what I mean? Like there's not just, oh, well, we're going to have to really lean on, let's say like a Tucker or a Dallas Goddard or something like that. Like it could come from anywhere. I mean, I think they've done a great job of kind of sharing that, and a lot of guys taking up that role where it's like, oh, well, maybe it's my time that I take over this game or this quarter or this half. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we finally got the tight ends the ball a little bit, right?
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of commotion for that. I love seeing Zach catch the rock. Obviously, I'm partial to the tight ends, but I just think that it's one of those situations where you have a wealth of riches, and which one you're going to go to naturally by default, because we have so many options with which to attack you. Someone's going to be down in touches, and some guys are going to be up in touches, and you get the rare occasion where everybody eats. And when they do that, generally it's a situation where starters tend to get pulled late, so they don't get to maximize maybe that statistical production that you're accustomed to seeing throughout the years with maybe a Dallas Goddard or a Jake Winicki or even a Zach Zenner. So you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt, and just understand that obviously Coach Luan's attacking where he sees the defense most vulnerable. But that's from the offensive perspective. From a defensive perspective, we can't sleep on the production that we've gotten from several guys. Couple that I want to highlight, and I'm bound to miss some. So if I miss you, it's nothing personal. It's just, again, bevy of riches on the defensive side of the ball as well. Isaiah Stallbert flying around, literally Mike Tysoning the ball when he sees it, even just peeking at him a little bit. Wish he would have been able to recover it, but he just punched the hell out of it in one of his plays. Tucker Large, his knack for the ball, I think he could have housed multiple reads where he jumped the routes and just didn't secure the ball. We need to get him on the jugs machine a little bit more consistently. Maybe get him with Zach Hines, who allegedly has the best hands on the teams. Maybe he'll show him a little bit of soft catch there. Mm-hmm. And then defensive line play, absolutely. I was going to highlight Brian Williams as well, but also I saw other guys like Van Marl continue to just be a stalwart there in the middle. Cade Tervier is just, I think because he's been so consistent as it relates to getting pressure on the quarterback, sometimes getting home, sometimes not. I think we just take for granted his ability over the years, especially kind of like Reese Winkleman. He's just one of those consistent lunch pail guys who's just going to get after you. What are your thoughts on that, Stack?
I think the D line is really, as a whole, just playing awesome right now. Like, game you pick out, like you could pick out, your Jared DePriest games, and like a game like this with Brian Williams, and Ryan is actually really turned into like a legit pass rusher. And that's something you saw always joke with him about, that, he's just a stand there and take on a double team, don't move kind of guy. But, he's elevated his play this year. And I think with the absence of someone like Caleb, right, where there's no one interior wise that is like legit the guy, it kind of gives everybody the chance to kind of elevate their play. And like everyone's having those moments where like, no, I'm the guy, or no, I'm the guy. Like it's really hard to almost decipher like, well, who's our best D tackle this year? Because like they're all making a really strong case for it. I think, in the last couple of weeks, Wolf Kale's come on real strong. You got a sack there. Max Balloon has been playing really well. I like, he's getting in the backfield, making some TFLs. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, I know he's not in the interior, but, Caden Johnson, just the massive step that he's taken in the last 2 years, and, kind of becoming an actual playmaker and someone that they can depend on. Like if we need someone to get to the quarterback or, make an effort sack or something like that, I think that kind of progression that he's had through this year and last year has kind of been awesome to watch.
I agree, and I think when you look at guys in the middle who were having to kind of account for a lot of that production that kind of fell off, you talked about Wolfcale Holson, and then you look at Max Balloon. Max Balloon made some plays on Saturday where I was like, man, if he keeps progressing like that and becomes more of a disruptor like that, he's got the size, the frame, and the physicality to get paid to play football. So that's one to kind of keep an eye on and see if he can continue to try to creep up on whatever his athletic ceiling is. And then you look at overall just what Ryan Van Marl has meant to just being in the middle there, but not only just defensively, but special teams and blocking kicks left and right, and just being a presence and a sheer force to have to contend with. It's been remarkable, and I think that for those of you who've been following Jackrabbit Faithful over the years, the trenches are where we've really been able to establish dominance over this past 3, 4, 5 years, which has allowed us to not only get to deep rounds of the playoffs, but win a national title. And we had 7 tackles for losses on Saturday. That's huge. I mean, you do that in the Missouri Valley. I don't care who you're doing it against. You creep up on double-digit tackles for loss. That's impressive, and that just shows, at least on the defensive side of the ball, that you mean business. What are your thoughts on that, Stack?
I mean, with the way they've been playing this year, I mean, it's been – I can't – like we said earlier, like some time ago, I think we had this conversation. We were like, well, we got to kind of start blocking them like normal when they, when teams don't want to do that, full slide or like all this stuff, like it's going to get ugly for them. And I think, some people tried it and it's gotten real ugly the last like 5-6 weeks. You know what I mean? Like now it's not, your Montana State. We're just trying to like diverge your D-line. Like some teams are like, they can't do that, right? They don't have the athletic ability to do that up front. So like when you kind of really have to hunker down and say like, okay, let's see what this D-line's about. Like, these are the kind of results you get. You know what I mean? And these guys that come to play week in and week out. And I'd say, probably their worst game was SIU. And like that wasn't even really bad. It was just like quarterback scramble, delay draw kind of stuff. And that's tough on any D-line. Like, and I don't want to make any premature statements, right? Because, last year I think the D-line was awesome. You have your all-timers and Caleb Sanders and Reese Winkleman. But I think as an entire collective group, like I think they're playing better this year than last year.
Yeah, and in my early season 21 questions for the 2023 Jacks on our blog at Substack, splittinghairsmedia.substack.com, if you guys want to check it out. It was really in-depth and thorough. Who's going to take over that production by Winkleman and Sanders departing? And I think it's created a vacuum where a lot of these younger guys have had to refine their skill set. They want a spot on the bus. They want a spot in the rotation. And we're not bashful to rotate guys like a hockey line, right? So if you show promise and you show that you have situational awareness and good knowledge of the game of football, and you have a tenacious of violence about you at the point of contact, they're going to put you on the field. I mean, why wouldn't you? So I think, like to your point, we've seen DePriest step up and wreak havoc from an interior pass rush standpoint. Like it's been incredible because you're a D tackle. It's hard as hell to have a transition pass rush move when you're clogged up in the middle like that, whether you're a 3-tech or a nose in an even scheme. And I think he's been able to do that. Wolfcale Holson, we talked about him doing it. Balloon at times has shown flashes. Van Marl, we've already discussed. B. Williams, he's been really the presence lately that has, his mitts just knocking the ball free when ball carriers are trying to cross through the initial line of scrimmage. It's the physicality has just been something to see, which I like, because Caleb Sanders was a game wrecker. He's a disruptor. He would get great penetration. He played with better bend than anybody I've really seen in a while in the Missouri Valley, outside of maybe Jarrett Brinkman, who was a beast himself. And then, when you look at the games that you were talking about, Southern Illinois was a tough one. I think it was mainly because of a function of Baker just trying to scramble. But when you look at that and you look at the Montana State game, coming off a D2 opponent, going right into an FCS power, albeit you have them at home, but you're still trying to figure out, okay, what schematically are they trying to do? And you mentioned they're kind of just walling them off and using their leverage against them, kind of like jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, for anybody who knows that martial art out there. You look at the quarterback run scheme against them. That was more so a function of our backers not flowing over the top like they needed to, right? So it's a full team effort on that front against a team like Southern Illinois. Same thing. They started to dent them late though. Quentin Hicks played a hell of a game in that one. Again, you had Cade Sevier coming off the edge. I think we've just continued again to just trend in the right direction. It'll be exciting to kind of watch to see who we'll have on our side of the bracket, because it is quite favorable so far, but we'll get into that later. Let's talk Missouri State real quick. We kind of recapped the season, generally speaking. We'll keep it to an hour tonight. But getting into Missouri State, what do we think? What do we think was our overall assessment of that one?
I thought defensively wise, at least up front, definitely one of our better games. Like I was saying earlier, I can't say enough. Like just the game that Brian Williams had, I think, because I was like watching him specifically, just so I was like, all right, like let's see what Brian's talking about. Like you're talking about, power moves, finesse moves, like long arms, forklifts. Like, I mean, he put on an actual clinic, like in terms of like just pass rush in and of itself. Like, and he's always stout in the run. Like, I know Coach Bibbs, I'm coached up there, but I mean, man, like it was super fun to watch. Caden Johnson, the plays he was making, and like we said, Balloon getting back there. Like, if you're a defensive line kind of guy, like that's a game you want to watch. It was really fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start on the offensive side of the ball, and then we'll work into that. Just looking at overall production, Mark, I think, had his best passing day overall, 323 yards through the air. Isaiah had 85 on the ground, didn't really need to feed him. Like I said, we went heavy aerial assault on him, where Jaden went for $187 through the air. Overall, in terms of, let's see, it doesn't break it down like ESPN does. Let's do team. There we go. When you look at our overall completion percentage, it was really high. Again, 16 to 23, about a 14-yard average per attempt. Again, 2 touchdowns through the air. Total offense, 477 yards on 62 plays, which is a 7.7 clip. Excuse me. That's incredible when you look at just finishing out the year, especially when you click on the tape and you realize we were a bit disjointed. We were third and long far too many times for my liking. I think we'd hit a big chunk play, an explosive play. Then we get a penalty. Our offensive line would do a great job protecting. Then they would surrender a TFL or a sack or a negative play. So I think overall, I just want to see some of that stuff shored up. And I think, giving us a week off to have some fresh legs will surely lend itself to our advantage. What are your thoughts from an offensive perspective, gentlemen?
I think they were off and running right away in the game. And then, I mean, you score 3 touchdowns in 3 possessions against, no offense to Missouri State, but against that team, it might be kind of tough to keep the hammer down. And they got some talent too, Missouri State does, to kind of make a few fireworks happen. So, that's kind of what you saw, I think, when we go up 21-3. And then, they made a few plays, and all of a sudden it's 21-10, and we're maybe sweating a little bit more than we think we should.
Yeah, credit to some of those guys, like on their defense. I thought their linebackers played a pretty good game. Granted, you are, I'd say, almost any team that the Jacks play is almost outmatched a little bit, but I thought their linebackers stepped up to the challenge and made some plays that a lot of other teams didn't usually make this year. So maybe it's one of those, it's end of the year, playing for pride, one of those type of deals, like, it's your last game, so you're getting a little more hyped up for it. But some credit to them. I thought some of those plays weren't necessarily us not playing as good. I thought some of those plays were pretty good plays by those linebackers.
Yeah, I agree. Those are good takes. Dan Furman here says we didn't have a lot of penalties. They were just untimely. I agree. Overall, though, we definitely need to reduce our overall penalties average per game. It's crippling, and it's only going to get worse if we're having those in untimely situations as the competition improves, particularly after the second round. Which, I mean, it's going to be a good team no matter what, but I think it'll be equivalent to some Missouri Valley play, like mid tier to below. When you look at time of possession, I mean, we won that, even chucking the ball all over the field, which is impressive. We were 2 for 2 on fourth down, so it's getting to a point where when it's third and manageable, we'll look to maybe run a run play because we know we might go for it on fourth down, especially when we're in plus territory. Anybody that doesn't know that terminology, that just means on the good side of the 50 going in to score. So I think that's important to take note of, because it's much like the Philadelphia Eagles or the trends that you're starting to see with the tush push. I think lends itself to our advantage with Mark's legs. But what do you guys think about that in terms of our short yardage stuff?
So, man, you got to use it. You got 2 NFL prospects on your O-line. You got one of the bigger running backs in FCS. You got people pushing from behind. Well, sometimes, but I'm all for it. Coach Lujan, you want to go for it on the 1 yard line because you're like, we're bigger than you? Yes, let's do it.
Love it. And then I should mention, as Scott brought up here, Zay went over 1,000 yards for this game on the season, which is excellent. So that's back-to-back years he's been over 1,000. Last year he was like around 1,400. He's only had 168 carries, I believe, this year, which is down from, I want to say, he's either at 180 some this year, or no, he's at 160 this year, and he had like 280 last year, which is impressive, because if you look at what's still left on the table for him to achieve, you look at how many games could be left to see him try to surpass that mark from last year. Obviously, it's a personal, individual goal, but it would be kind of cool to see that happen as well, considering how well he does run the ball in the playoffs. I don't feel like it didn't seem like he got a lot of touches on Saturday. Your thoughts on that, gentlemen? I think, was he maybe a little dinged up? I don't know if you guys saw, there was one like short yardage one. It looked like maybe his shoulder or something. So this bye week will be much needed for him, it looks like.
Yeah, it looked like I think it was a D lineman came through, or maybe it was a linebacker on a blitz or something. Almost caught his right on his collarbone or something. I mean, I'm sure he's fine, but he looked like he was kind of protecting that shoulder a little bit as he went down, and looked like he kind of got up a little gingerly too. So hopefully he's okay. Yeah, this bye week should really do him some good.
Yeah, and it's all, at the end of the day, like, we got like you said, like a wealth of players, and it's all about protecting our assets at this point, because we got something really important to play for. So like, if you don't got to take those touches, like, I wouldn't give them to him. And I think maybe that's kind of what our coaches were thinking. Like, games getting out of hand, like, all right, cool. Like, we still got 2 running backs that are still legit guys. So like, why risk it?
Yeah, exactly. And it should be worth noting that he did come back into the game and finish out some carries and some drives. So that was good to see. We did get 2 sacks on Saturday, which is great to see as well from defensive pressure standpoint. We should note that defensively for South Dakota State, Jason Freeman again wreaked havoc and was the leading tackler. Adam Bach, who we haven't heard a ton from this year, made 4 solo tackles as well, had 6 total stops, and Freeman had 7, along with a pass breakup. But one thing that it's going to be something to keep an eye on this year is how much does Bach impact the game if he's on a pitch count, if he's not going and leading the way from start to finish. What's that going to look like? We've had guys step up. Savion Williamson had a tackle for loss. So he's obviously a familiar face who knows how to get everybody lined up and where they're supposed to be and really be a leader back there and fly around. He's taken steps as he's continued to evolve. Also, Isaiah Stalbert, as we mentioned, had that forced fumble. He finished the day with 4 tackles on senior day with just a really solid performance overall. They wanted to air the ball out left and right, so we were locked down in coverage a lot throughout that game. And Pacheco is a really good quarterback. He's someone that you want to watch throughout the Valley. I think he's got some more eligibility, so he'll be someone to watch. And I think it's a really good precursor to the game that we've got coming up in the second round with some of that Southern speed, if you want to call Missouri State a Southern speed, a Southern team. But they definitely have speed and athleticism out there on the perimeter and in the skill player room. So that's something that's going to bode well, I think, as we go into our playoff matchup. Want to highlight Matthew Durant's. We talked about Juice a little bit earlier on in the season, Stack, but he's really come up in both special teams and getting some reps on D. What's your thoughts on him?
I mean, granted, right? Like it's safety. Like he's like a long body kind of guy. You know what I mean? Like a true athlete, Florida guy. He's got that swag. He's got that speed on him. But I think it's kind of awesome that we're kind of able to rotate in guys at safety, even though like, you know, and I don't know why I really haven't said anything about Reader this season, but like he's still going crazy, right? And just kind of getting more guys in there and more guys acclimated when you still have, and like there's no like major drop off from like these, you know, all conference caliber safeties that we have is just another luxury, you know what I mean? And guys that are not about to graduate, he's like Durant's, I think is what, a sophomore, I want to say something like that. Yeah. So, you know, just getting guys used to playing more. Guys are going to have to play a whole lot more snaps next year. Definitely cool to see.
I mean, like we talked about, Savion with his tackle for loss, Van Marl going out with a bang on senior day with 2 tackles for a loss. And then sack yardage, obviously 1, so that counts in there. It's lumped in there. Then you got Caden Johnson, like plays the high motor all the time. 1 tackle for a loss for 7 yards worth of lost yardage. Aaron Wolf-Kelhosen, like we continue to talk about him, a half tackle for loss. Then you had Max Balloon, like I said, 1 tackle for loss. Kate Trevere, 1 tackle for a loss, as well as 1 sack. And then you had Zach Wilson, who's had a half tackle for a loss as well. Continuing to be a presence and a force there as well when we look at just guys cycling in and out of the rotation, whether it be Caden coming out, Q going in, doesn't matter. Guys are just being productive across the board.
And one thing that's good to see about, you know, as the season gets later and seeing more guys play, like, what's that mean is like Coach Bibbs is watching film and watching guys get better and saying, like, I feel comfortable putting them out on the field. You know what I mean?
That's the best point.
Yeah.
That's the best point of the podcast so far. I agree, because you're looking to see guys impact games late in the year, but guys that are taking what's happening on the practice field and translating it into game time production from underclassmen or you know, whether they be a junior or below. They're making their impact shown due to the work that they're putting in Monday through Friday. So that's a really great point. And I'm excited to see that continue to happen. We've started to see it even obviously on the offensive side of the ball this year with Angel Johnson getting more touches.
Yeah.
I like that we're getting younger guys into the game late in the game as well, because we're starting to see, you know, what does Chase have in him, right? Like obviously he's just, I love seeing us roll that second, third unit offense onto the field and then just run QB power and just light them up, because it steals people's souls, man. It's just so defeating and demoralizing.
Yeah.
It's so cool
and,
to
you
see.
know, one thing, like,
go ahead, man.
Oh, you got it.
It's just so cool to see, like you said, like, yeah, throw out Chase Mason in there, and it's not like, oh, well, let's see what he can do. It's like, good God, let's see what he's going to do, because, you know, he's just built like a freak out there. Like, you're not, I wonder what's going to happen. It's, oh, I know something special is going to happen.
Right? It's insane because I continue to just bring it up over and over, but he's 6'4", like 225, 230. and he could be starting anywhere in the Missouri Valley, just purely if they wanted to do QB run heavy. And then he just developed, a short, quick game or, quick passing game asset. But I think that he's obviously going to become more than that for us down the road. It's just great that he gets a chance to learn and sit behind Mark while doing it. Tucker Large, again, I know we brought him up early, but man, is he really good at getting in the film room, understanding what the offense wants to do against him, and then undercutting a lot of these routes because his diagnosis is just lightning quick. Just got to get him to trust his hands a little bit more, to splay those fingers a little bit more instead of having T-Rex arms.
Yeah, but I mean, you talk about elevating play. I mean, this dude came on this, and obviously, when Mason was saying it, we're all like, he's just a Sioux Falls guy, so Mason's just loving him. But I mean, he's just turned into I know we say this a lot, but he's a guy, you know what I mean? And to see him elevate his play from kind of, being like a rotational guy last year and bringing some juice off the bench to being a guy that's just like a game changer, you know what I mean? Like a real difference maker, as Coach Stig would say. We get a few more guys like that. I don't know what teams are going to do against us, you know what I mean? And it's looking like we got young guys at almost every single level making plays like that. I'd say outside of maybe linebacker, you know what I mean? But that's a deep, older group. But at every single level of our defense, we got younger guys that are developing into real difference makers, you know what I mean? So I'm excited to see what this team's going to look like. This defense itself is going to look like in 2-3 years.
Definitely. I mean, we do have Caleb Franzel in there making plays. We have the Kusler twins making plays, but I don't know if they're coming back. I think they might be seniors. I can't recall. We do have that extra COVID year for the younger guys as well, that people took advantage of. So we might see some younger guys taking advantage of that and then getting an additional senior year as well. So I think, what would it be this next year? Because it was a 2020 class, right? So
yeah,
this next year, after next year will be the last year where they can really use that. So it'll be fun to still kind of watch to see how that cycles through all these programs really, and see the players develop, which is kind of fun because, it was a weird year and it robbed people of a lot of different things on and off the field. So it'll be fascinating to see the development, the continued development of these younger guys. Fellas, let's look ahead to Big South member and SoCon member matchup in the first round. Out of the Big South, we have Gardner-Webb. Big South joined conferences. I'll tell you what, I don't even care who they joined with. That conference is the conference had to join with someone else, if that tells you anything, just to get
Ohio Valley.
The Ohio Valley. Thank you very much for that, Scott. And then Mercer, grew up in Georgia. Mercer is in Macon, which is damn near Florida. That was always the biggest spot to drive through before we got to Florida, coming from the Atlanta area. But Mercer's got some dogs. I think Mercer's going to take this one.
Yeah.
They got some receivers who are supposed to be the real deal and potentially the best at all levels. Carter Peavy is their quarterback, who I think he's serviceable. Of note is Al Wooten II at running back. Big time cornerback is Cameron Sims. And then you have Ken Stanley as their standout linebacker. This is their first playoff appearance, so that'll be exciting for them. They'll be playing with a little added juice, and then they're playing at home, and they do have a good turnout at some of their home games this year. They're also first team. They had several guys on defense make it who are worth noting. First of all, Ken Stanley, who I mentioned, he's LB, first team, also con. Then we have another defensive player on the D line, Solomon Zubairu. And then we have another defensive player in the secondary, Lance Wise Jr. So those three are our first teamers. Those are ones that you want to pay attention to, certainly on the defensive side of the ball, especially when we look to attack them. Now, when we look at the offensive side of the ball, again, this is Mercer. So this is the team out of the SoCon, all first team of SoCon on offense is Ty James. Ty James is a wide receiver who's a really, really solid player. Clearly, you got teams like Furman down there in the SoCon who air it out as well, who have solid wide receiving core. So he made it in both the coaches and the media. Again, that is Ty James, someone to keep an eye on. And then all Southern Conference first team again, Devron Harper. He's a return specialist. So someone who we're probably going to want to look to avoid kicking the ball to. Hunter's done an excellent job at flipping the field if we've needed him to, and really just being reliable in that phase of the game. So that'll be something to watch. Gentlemen, who do you think, despite who we see, who do you think we would prefer?
I mean, if I'm being completely candid here, and I feel like I should be, when it comes to these teams from the South, you know what I mean? Like, South Dakota State gets the best kids from South Dakota, right? Like the absolute best players from South Dakota. These Southern teams get like 4th, 5th, 6th best kid from Georgia or Florida or something like that, right? And just to be frank, it does not matter who we get. If you cannot beat us up front, you're getting 40 points dropped on you, period. If you can't win up front, you're not scoring more than 13 and you're getting 40 put on you. You know what I mean? So whoever it is, right? And I'm not going to sit here and lie. Like, I've watched a whole bunch of them, right? But I mean, I've played the Southern teams and all that. Like, those guys usually up front, they're not about that life. Usually, like your SoCon guys, and you're like how Kennesaw was, like they're not about that life. So like if you don't come into Dana J. Dykehouse thinking I have to win up front and not the gimmicks and the full slide and like all this and let's air it out, like no. If you don't think, like, if you can't run the ball like that and you can't get penetration on our offensive line, it's wraps. Doesn't matter who you are.
I would agree, man. I think the biggest thing is it's a long way to travel. Coming from the South where the weather has just started to turn and it's still in like the 60s. I'm hoping for something more frigid in a couple weeks, which I'm sure we'll probably be able to get. I don't know if you can dig into that, Scott, and catch some forecast for us.
It's supposed to be 44 and mostly cloudy. A little breezy though.
They're going to come out in long sleeves,
yeah.
And, all that. Even if they don't, I mean, it's not a sign of anything in terms of what'll play out on the field. But it's a whole different element, whole different environment. I think they're going to be juiced if it ends up being Mercer, who I think it will be. I think they're going to be juiced coming off an emotional first not at large. I think they won the SoCon. No, they were an at large.
Yep.
First at large bubble team. They were one of the last in. UC Davis was one of those fringe teams who I thought should have got in again. But again, they're going to be really juiced and amped coming up with their first postseason win. And then I think they're just going to run into something different, on Saturday. And again, just in my opinion, I think it's one of those situations where we are our own worst enemy. Like that we're going to get in our own way or we're not, whether it be penalties, whether it be production. I think it's just going to be one of those matchups, whether it be Gardner Webb or not. Now, I think they're going to have some athletes. I mean, obviously, Ty James, he's an All-American 2 times. And they can play some ball and sling it around down there. So it'll be interesting to see Dyshawn. I would like to see Dyshawn matched up with him and really put some pressure on that quarterback to try to make some plays down the field and see maybe Tucker secure some of those picks that he wasn't able to previously.
And I think, without a conference opponent, even when the Jacks weren't as good as they are now, like these guys don't see a whole lot of gap scheme. Like they don't see like just downhill running where it's like, we'll run the ball all the way down the field until you stop it. Like they don't see a whole lot of that. Like they don't see offensive lines that are like as good as like you'd see week in and week out in Missouri Valley or defensive line. I mean, a lot of those guys are really good edge rushers, right?
Exactly. Their interior
Like-
D line is different, where you win
Yeah.
a contact. Gus Miller, they haven't seen a Gus Miller. They haven't seen Mason McCormick, Garrett Greenfield, Evan Burnson, or John O'Brien. I mean, these are big dudes. I mean, again, there's a reason why we've kind of taken over the MO that team up north had for a minute there, where they were just leaning on you, putting NFL offensive lineman bodies all over the NFL. And now that hat is on the heads of Jackrabbit fans. So when you look at the overall bruiser mentality, I think they play a different style. They play more finesse, air it out, run and gun. And you see that riddled throughout the SoCon, which is an exciting brand of ball. But it's completely different when you got offensive linemen leaning on you left and right. And I know they're different than North Dakota, but I look at them as that either one of these teams, I look at them as kind of that caliber, right? Where we just ran it right down their throats and said, we understand your style of play, but we know ours. Stop it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, that's something that's hard to like just turn it on in that moment, right? Like if you don't see that all year, like that's I think like their biggest disadvantage. Like you haven't had to practice this and you haven't had to see this week in and week out. Like the Jackrabbits, like they get to see North Dakota State and they get to see you and I and like teams that try to do that to you. Like for them, it's gonna be like a almost like a culture shock, like the start of the game, like, oh, like this is how we're about to play. And then like, you know, even if it's second half, they make great adjustments. Like if you're down 2 scores, like brother, it's almost time to pack it up, like against these guys. Because like we just gonna run the ball, and like, and if you still can't stop it, like, sorry, stop in the red zone. Okay, well, there's another 3.
Yes,
points.
sir.
Like, I don't know.
No, that's a great point. It's controlling the clock, asserting your will, and playing your brand of football on your turf. And I want to talk about our turf because we were in the top 5 this year of average attendance, which we really need to shout out. South Dakota State averaged 18,208 asses in the seats, and that is 94.1% of capacity. That's insane considering you open up a home game with a D2 squad. Then you got, you know, other games throughout this year that were marquee matchups. I think we had 4 straight sellouts. It was packed. I think it was what do we have, like 16,000 there on Saturday, Scott?
Oh, yeah, here. I think it was like 15-4 or something like that.
15 plus. So 15 plus on senior day, which is like way more than we typically have had because it tends to be about in the 10s, 12s. Because by that point, it's some different opponent who is, you know, 3-8 or whatever at that point. Not too dissimilar from Missouri State, but people want to go out and hunt. They want to do their thing with their family, and they think the Jacks are going to wrap it up. But now people are traveling because they want to witness this product consistently that we're putting out there. Fall starts happened again on Saturday. Scott, what was the environment like? Was it kind of loud? Were you feeling some energy?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, honestly, there weren't as many students there. There's probably 500 or 600 fewer students than there were maybe for that Western Oregon game, which tells you that there's probably a good 1,000 more non-students there. And, you know, people were getting loud and rowdy. And I think we started counting them. Me and my boys, we were the first fall start. Hey, that's us, man. That's 1. And then 2, 3. I think they might have had 4. They had 3 for sure. Yep. And no, it was a good engaged crowd. And I rewatched the Midco broadcast, and they were commenting on how well this crowd was staying engaged and getting loud and key points. So it was a lot more intense than last year. I want to say there was probably 9,000 or 10,000 people there because it was so cold. But
right.
This one was good. It was a lot of fun on Saturday.
And it's uncharacteristically warm for this time of year. Even 44, I feel like is a bit mild. And I think, you know, regardless of the weather, they'll have to play. Whoever it ends up being will have to play in it anyway. So that won't be too much of an issue. But it can be a big issue with the noise factor. And Stack, what would that do when you would see an offensive lineman not be able to hold his water and jump early? What would you do? I'm sure you would compliment him on you can do better next time, buddy. I'm sure you would say stuff like that, huh?
Yeah, I think that's like some of the funniest interactions you have with O linemen. I think it was and it wasn't even at home like the funniest one. I think it was Indiana State. We had put in like a move call where Crockett would yell move and the whole D line would shift, and then this same guy kept jumping, and then Crockett said some horrible things to him after. But I mean, those are just some of the best parts because like I know this guy's nervous. Like at this point, he's thinking about what I'm doing, and he's not thinking about what he's supposed to be doing right now. So I think when you get in an offensive lineman's head like that, like it just makes your game that much easier.
I love it. And I think stemming and leafing, for those who were curious. So what Stack just said, Croc did with yell move and everybody would shift. That's called stemming to a different position from your original alignment. And then leafing is like stuff that you've seen on the program where guys will go over the top or underneath one another to switch positions. That's stemming and leafing. And I always thought it was the most annoying crap in the world. But offensive linemen back when they used to do that corny ass where they're on their knees and they stand up and then they get into the 3-point stance, super tooly freaking alignment that you see a lot in Pee Wee ball. But it's a good way to earn some cheap yards, that stemming and leafing, and then also make it very difficult for them to understand what your alignment is and who they're trying to block. If it's a if it's a zone scheme type situation, it would theoretically be easier, but it's easier said than done. Look at Brian Flores. For those of you who are suffering Vikings fans like myself, he does a phenomenal job of making it difficult to identify bodies at the line of scrimmage. So you don't know which direction the blitz is coming. You don't know what numbers to account for. That's a great way to earn some cheap yardage. But yeah, I think that that attendance is going to be a key factor in us getting some of those cheap penalty yardages and putting them in long down to go situations as we get deeper into the playoffs.
Yeah. And all you're going to do, like as a crowd, right? The more you guys get out there, just going to, for our defense at least, just give them just the biggest edge in the world. You know what I mean? Like if it's 3rd and long and this guy doesn't even know what the snap count is, and neither do I, you just made my life way easier because now we're almost on an even playing field. So,
yes, sir. Couldn't agree more. Dan says the crowd was juiced up first half. Second half was a little less engaged. Completely understand that. The game was a bit disjointed as we moved on. I felt like we should have put 60 plus up on them. But again, untimely penalties, getting some other bodies in there, and overall just airing it out more kind of lent itself to that type of a flow. I think want to get to some of these comments here. This was with respect to us playing a Southern team. Jim mentioned Bill and Mary last year. Like if anybody caught that MSU Bill and Mary game in
they did bogus.
They should have stayed on the plane
or something.
Yeah, they should have stayed on the plane. I want to say it was like 48-7 at halftime or something. Actually, it might have been 0. They might have had a goose egg. But yeah, it's such a shock to the system sometimes when you play in these frigid climates. Different than when you play in warm climates because your body is already going to be warm. Neither are desirable, but both create an advantage. So I'm excited for that.
I'll clue you guys in on a. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I'll clue you guys in on a big secret. If a team is afraid of the cold, if a dude comes out there with no shirt on, he's terrified to play in the cold. Every time.
Delaware last year.
Yeah, they come out in no shirt and then they get blown out. So like if you see a guy that's shirtless already, you could almost just go home like, all right, yeah, we won. It's over.
Because they're overcompensating, right? Just treat it like another game. It's so funny that the strategic mind games teams will try to play with one another. It's the same thing. There was a statistical analysis done where guys at the fight press conference, if they start to smile or make jokes or laugh, they're actually terrified. And they tend to lose or get knocked out or TKOs more often than the guys who are just stoic. So I found that to be funny. Jim says with the running clock, you need a defense to score to get to 50 now. I heard on average the Jacks are running 9 pure play. Yeah, exactly. That's definitely true. I want to get to a stat Jim actually brought up on X, which was insane, and it's relevant to this conversation of the Jacks being their own worst enemy. Of the 7 ranked wins that the Jacks had, how many were coming off of a bye? And it's insane the margin of defeat that that they suffered even coming off buys. It was like something insane, some insane number. I don't know if we can pull that up, Scott, off X, but it was
That
a
was
sight
Jim Poppin, right?
Jim Poppin. It was a sight to behold, and I think it's just wild overall what they've been able to do, man. Because like we talked about it, Zach, I think South Dakota had a bye coming off. I want to say NDSU might have had a bye.
Yeah.
I think North Dakota had a bye. So like all the Dakotas kind of had a bye and still got the business.
Yeah, just got. Oh man, just thinking about this year and like kind of how they handle business, like as a whole, like man, I think for some of these games, like I was worried for like not even like worried, but like really zoned in, like all right, what are we gonna do for like 3 drives, and then I'd be like, oh okay, well now I can just casually watch because like what I mean. These guys they're really living up to that like mantra, like we said earlier. Like he might be one of the best FCS teams ever do it.
For real. And we talked about that before. Statistically, we'll have to see. But yeah, everyone we played, according to Dan, and then Dallas here, everyone we played either had a bye or played Murray, Western Illinois, or ISU Sycamores. That's insane.
Yeah.
Like the schedule was stacked against the Jacks, especially having a Thursday. The only thing that was beneficial maybe was a Thursday opener, and then having more days to prepare for Montana State. Montana State still played Utah Tech, which was a better first round test to gauge their ability than was Western Oregon. I almost forgot who the hell we even played. Wow, this is crazy. Garrett, thanks for weighing in. Jacks are averaging 9 meaningful drives, not the end of half, per game, and scoring a touchdown on over 50%. Yeah, it's wild. Just the stats, when you look at them, this team does it so methodically and not really flashy that when you look to see that their stats, it's mind-boggling. Like, particularly the red zone scoring stats. It's like when they're inside the 20, you better – get on your knees, pray the Hail Mary, pray the rosary, maybe dabble in some other religions, whatever tickles your fancy, because you're not keeping them out of getting points. So
we only have like one red zone appearance this year that we have not scored points, right? And that was
against Southern Illinois,
right.
And all hit
Zach Hines in the hands, right?
Yeah. And then it just floated in air. I don't know why. To be honest, Mark should have like 1 pick all year.
Yeah. The Drake one was BS too.
Yeah. I mean, the Drake one. Yeah, exactly. I think I don't remember the game, but I was knocking off the Drake pick because it was like it was an early, like first play trying to go deep, and he just kind of threw it up there.
Something like that. It was, I think it hit the receiver in the hands or something, or it just fell into a defender's lap or something like that. I remember thinking the same thing when we were
he's thrown like 1 serious pick this year where it was like actually it was into double coverage against USD. That's the one it was.
Yep. Oh yeah. And that was a great interception by
it's a great interception. And I know he was just trying to let his guy make a play, but that was their best defense. That's probably one of the best DBs in the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really only his lone forced decision of the year. But again, while we're talking about Mark and some of these crazy stats, this is hilarious too. Defense has only given up a TD on 14% of drives.
What?
Oh my God.
What?
You need to hang that in the Louvre. You need to hang that in the Louvre. My God, that's insane.
Like
I don't even know that I can do that on PlayStation anymore. Like that's
right, like
rookie mode.
And it's just really like every single level of this defense has like legit dudes. Like, and and it's weird to say like as a fan, because you're like, oh well, maybe I'm just being a homer. Like, no, I'm not. Like, you're not. Like, there's legit, I would say, 10 guys in our defensive line that would start somewhere else.
Oh yeah, I would love to criticize him. I criticize him when it's
Yeah.
deserved. I don't try to be a jobber because like I respect great brands of football being played, right? Like Montana State a couple years ago, they just had our number. I wouldn't even actually call that a great brand. That was 50-50 ball Tommy, which we can get into. This isn't an MSU podcast. I'd love to see Chambers get an opportunity. I just still I understand the integrity that Tommy Millott has. I love his heart. I love how he plays the game. But I don't think he's as good as Sean Chambers. I just don't understand why they continue to ride that.
It's that like that national championship run they had. And granted, I think he just caught a lot of people off guard, personally.
Yeah. Well, and he's from Butte. He's from Butte. This is what I've heard from people who are in Montana State that kind of have a beat on the situation. He's a homegrown kid from the heart of what Montanans view as part of their state, from Butte, which I couldn't even point out on a map. So it's not a geography lesson. But from what they tell me, that draws in more Montana State fandom, more donorship, stuff like that, as opposed to Sean Chambers originally going to Wyoming, transferring in, which, I mean, I want to win though. I'm trying to keep my job. I'm trying to keep my job. I'll worry about donorship on the back end, but you guys
want to live and die by that, by all
Exactly.
means. Like, hey, I'm a Jacks fan, bro. Do it. Do that if you want to do it. But
I think it has something to do with Butte is literally like halfway in between Missoula and Bozeman. So there you go. I mean, it makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah, it's going to dip into Missoula's recruiting draw potentially. But I think Missoula's doing just fine right now, huh? So another group that's doing just fine again is that defense. Seth Meyer brings up here, SDSU is holding opponents to 0 points on almost 40%. They're at 38%, negating points on their red zone attempts.
Well, that was huge on that fumble.
Yeah. And you got to think, with Big Ounce and Jared blocking these PATs these last few weeks. I mean, dude, and just to do that almost consistently, even if it's just for a couple weeks, like I think it was North Dakota State. Did they do it against Youngstown? I think we got one that game.
Yes.
What did you say?
Like,
did he get a blocked field goal? Is that what you said?
Yeah, against Youngstown.
Yeah,
that's almost like
Van Marl did.
Yeah, that's like 3 weeks in a row. We're denying people. Like, it's extremely demoralizing.
Did we block one of those?
I believe so. Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, I couldn't. The telecast just said he missed, but I couldn't tell if we blocked it.
Yeah, so I think if you're able to do that, like, even like I think the best example is in North Dakota State game when they score and they're like, okay, like maybe we're in this, and then you just know that extra point's not going to happen. Like going to the sideline, like, yeah, you just scored, but you're like, man, we can't even get that right. Like they're on our necks for a PAT.
Mm-hmm.
Like that'll kill a team's morale.
I mean, it absolutely did. Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott.
Well, in the stand, like in that game, going back to the NDSU game, when we blocked that PAT, me and my buddy sitting there, just it was Dan Furman. We were sitting there, we blocked it, and we're like, oh, we just won this game. Granted, we're cocky fans that had a few beers before, but we're like, we just won the game on a blocked PAT, and we're down 6-0. Like this is incredible. And on Saturday, the entire crowd was chanting, "Block that kick."
I know. I heard that through the telecast. I love that. That's insane when you got that. That's a step forward in SDSU fandom because that shows that they understand what's happened historically during this season, and then they know the potential for a block kick is upped even more because of what we've done on the field. And that intellect of the fan evolution, like knowing how to cheer for what and when, that's a step in the right direction. That might be a leap, and I'm impressed. Again, it's nothing against folks from South Dakota. It's just like when you don't have a team historically that was dominant in D2, that we beat that drum ad nauseum here, and now you have a dominant team, it takes a little bit to catch up and to build that DNA of a proper fan base. I'll tell you what, though, 18,208 and 94% capacity. It's trending up. The stock is up. You want to buy that SDSU stock now before it gets a lot higher.
Yeah.
So, fellas, I would say we need to talk about special teams, and it's fitting that Dallas dropped Pat Cashmore's name, our exclusive special teams coach. Want to shout out him this year. But I will say that the one area or blemish we should kind of look at is simply just the PAT field goal operation. Again, it was tough to see, but it looked like it hit the flagpole, our missed field goal.
It was the net pole there that holds up the net. It wasn't even the upright.
The net pole, yeah, they said it was the upright. Definitely didn't look like the upright, but what it did look like again was he's kicking laces. So to me, like when you got a guy like Hunter miss by that margin, I think that's on the op. And again, we got a brand new holder, brand new snapper this year. Shout out to Keaton Heidi for doing such a damn good job throughout the course of the Natty run and historically. But yeah, I gotta just think that this is an awesome time for us to be able to work on some of the fundamental aspects of all phases of the game, right? Kickers get their operation smoother, get the time down and punts off quicker, make sure we're pursuing our special teams lanes, and maybe even sprinkle in some wrinkles for some razzle dazzle and some fun stuff we want to do and put in the back of our pocket and to deploy it when we want. What do you guys think?
I think a lot of it is just, just getting guys a lot of rest. I think is the biggest thing for this bye week. I would say, I know Jackson wasn't he was questionable going into this game, and we kind of didn't know where he was going to be for that. Granted, like we all thought, he's not missing senior day, but just for a lot of guys, like our old line who take, every single snap, guys to just kind of get their bodies back. And I know Coach Rogers has always been great about that. About when it's a bye week, it's not about let's kill each other. It's about, okay, let's get back to a position where we can be able to kill someone else. So I know they're going to take care of their bodies. It's going to be a good week just to kind of get right.
Yeah. And, I think ultimately you'll use this bye week for what you need as a player too individually. Like maybe you're getting extra treatment, maybe you're getting your feet under you, maybe you're dealing with blisters. I don't know, just any little nicks, bumps, and bruises that you can address to give yourself a good springboard here coming down to the next 4 games, because it's 1-0, but we better prepare and expect that there are 4 left. Just like I was saying to Fernson Brewing with my ears up, I got 4 left, and there's 4 for a reason. But yeah, Jim, Caden is long snapping. He's done a great job. The placement on these snaps are good. Again, it just comes down to John Bell being able to spin, make sure we're not getting laces, make sure you have the right tilt on the ball. Holding is one of the most difficult positions, I would say, in football. So kudos to him for even having the competence to be able to do it like he's done so far. Hopefully it doesn't matter and it's irrelevant. And I think if we do what we're supposed to do on the other 2 phases of the game, offense and defense, it's going to be inconsequential in a good way. I think we've gone pretty long here, fellas. I look forward to seeing Gardner Webb, Mercer. Before we get out of here, which team do you think is going to win it?
I have no idea. I'm not going to lie to you.
I think I got Mercer.
I think I have Mercer too, especially considering when you look at the turnover differential for all these teams that are in the playoffs. There's only 2 with a negative turnover margin differential. One is Gardner Webb, and I want to say they're at -7, which is not great. And then the other is -4, and that's Idaho. So for Idaho to do what they've done with a negative turnover differentials, going to want to keep an eye on Idaho for being able to do as well as they have. Then you're also going to want to look out for the Jacks, because the Jacks are the highest or second highest other than Furman, which may tell you something about Mercer here in the SoCon. Furman has the highest at +16. I think the Jacks are +11. So it'll be fascinating to see what we're able to do with either Mercer or Gardner Webb coming into this next week. But I got Mercer as well. Folks, we look forward to chatting next week as we preview whoever we've got. We hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving. Real quick, fellas, what's your favorite dish? It can be a side or main course.
Sweet potato pie. Better
Okay.
than pumpkin pie. Don't have me on it.
That's a good one. Just your standard green bean casserole.
Like it.
Yeah.
It's either great or you're a psychopath. Because I can agree. If it's great, I love it. If it's not, it's bad. That's bad news bears. But I'm gonna go with, for me, I like it all. I'm an equal opportunity consumer here. I'm gonna go with maple glazed ham. I'm a ham guy. I don't like that dry turkey shit. You can miss
I'm
me.
with you.
Yeah.
You just got to go with the dark meat on the turkey. I don't reach for any of
Exactly.
that light meat. That's
There's a joke in there somewhere, crowd. There's a joke in there somewhere. But yeah, no, I love it because it's food, family, and football here on Thanksgiving. So you guys tune in. Make sure you get some good time with family, get some good community. And want to shout out our sponsors one more time. Thank you to Cottonwood Coffee and Bistro. Again, if you're looking for holiday gifts, feel free to check them out at cottonwoodcoffee.com. Also, shout out True North Retirement Team. They're ready and waiting to give you a free consultation to set your portfolio up for success at whatever stage of life you're in currently. So with that, go big, go blue,
Go
go
Jacks.
Go Jacks.